If you have ever wanted to meet that weird Italian plumber that has that porn mustache and he still wears overalls even though they went out of style like 20 years ago, if you want to meet that weird dude that is always absolutely bombed on mushrooms and is like punching through brick walls, then you are clearly munching on the same exact mushrooms that this dude was taking, because he's fictional. He's a fictional character that only exists in video games. He's either an animation or like 10 pixels. So stop with your buffoonery. But seriously, guys, the closest thing that you can get to it, I guess, is meeting a dude dressed up as Mario at the Super Nintendo World in Universal Studios. I guess that's as close as you can get to it. And yes, why not? I decided to make an entire video talking about the Super Nintendo Universal Studios themed attraction. And I have to say, if you grew up as a Super Mario fan or just a Nintendo fan in general, I highly suggest you guys go here. It's absolutely worth the money. Absolutely everything there is themed, whether it's the restrooms, a sitting area where you can rest on mushrooms. You can meet your favorite characters there, whether it's Mario, Luigi, Peach, even Toad. They have a quaint little restaurant there where essentially Toad is supposed to cook you some very delicious food. Minus the delicious, it's pretty good food with a giant price tag. But if you're not going there consistently, if you're only going to go there like once a year, it's definitely worth the experience. The theming is absolutely phenomenal. There are these screens all around the restaurant where you can see little glimpses of Bowser essentially terrorizing all of the little toads. And let's not forget the shop. They have a ton of amazing merchandise there, whether it's stuff that's pretty generic, but they also have a lot of product that is specifically sold there at Universal. Like, you can only purchase it there. Don't even get me started on all of the small interactive games that are going on there that you can use if you have the Super Nintendo Power Band. It's also worth mentioning, and I do not have any footage of it, but there's also a little cafe at the entrance or near the entrance of the Universal Studio lot. You can purchase little drinks, calzones, things of that nature. And it's nice because when I happened to go there, the actual Super Nintendo area did not have any drinks or any snacks. You could only get those inside of the restaurant. And so it's nice that they have a little cafe in case you don't want to go in there and deal with the crowds, or if you want to get something that's Mario related outside of the Super Nintendo world, this is a great option. And from time to time, they will have an extra little upcharge if you're interested in getting into the park an hour early. So if, let's say, the hours are from like 9 to 6, you can get in from 8 to 6. In that first hour, you can get a ton of time or extra time there at Super Nintendo World, and you're able to get into the rides a little bit earlier and kind of skip the crowds, maybe take some photographs, and overall just enjoy the area a little bit more, because there are times when there's just a big giant bottleneck there. There is a ton of people, a lot of crowds, and so it's more difficult to kind of enjoy it with as many people around. And yes, overall the themed area is one of the best in any type of theme park. I definitely feel like it brings you into the universe. It drops you in there. It actually makes you feel like you're experiencing a level in the Super Mario franchise. Having said all of those amazing things, there were some downsides to the experience, and the biggest one has to be the way that this theme park or this themed area is designed, where everything seems to be built upwards. Everything is vertical instead of horizontal. Now, granted, if you take it into account all of the like extra curricular activities that you can do within the area and, you know, put them together, it's quite a bit of square footage. Like, you have the main area where all the seats are at, some interactive features here and there. You have the shop right behind it. You have the restaurant, which I already touched on a little bit, but all of those areas combined on like a flat surface, you definitely get quite a bit of distance. Having said all of that, the restaurant is not within the field of vision when you enter the park. Neither is the gift shop, and neither is the ride area. So essentially the only real area that you're getting a, you know, like a really good look at is that center part where you do the meet and greets with the costumed characters, and then the little seating area with all the mushroom seats. That's essentially it. Everything else is kind of outside of your view of area, and so your mind just doesn't quite register how big it really is. And so just from the moment that you enter, it definitely feels a little bit underwhelming. Most of the time you're going to spend looking upwards at like beautifully themed areas that are built like maybe 30 to 40 feet above ground. You can't even see them up close, and I think that can get pretty frustrating. I feel like they should have done something similar to what they did in Toontown, where they do have a backdrop of the sky, but that's like maybe 50 to 60 feet high, but then the actual buildings that you're interacting with or taking pictures with or just recording as a whole, those are usually, you know, around like eye level or a little bit higher. So you definitely get that the highest level of enjoyment there. You can walk around, like as I said, take pictures and just kind of immerse yourself. Whereas in the Super Nintendo world, especially here in Hollywood, it feels very condensed. And so a lot of the time, if the crowds are ramping up, you can definitely get very claustrophobic. As I said, it feels a little bit underwhelming, as if you're all being kind of pushed into this tiny little section of the theme park. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of different areas at Universal usually has like some pretty wide open space. Like if you're talking about, and I'll give you guys some example, like we just recently kind of dissected the whole situation with the Simpsons themed area, and that one has multiple different exits or multiple different routes that you can take. You can decide to go to the lower lot or go through the area where you take the tram tour, or from that area you can actually reach the Harry Potter universe. So there are definitely a lot of options. Same thing in Disneyland, even when you're at, like, let's say Galaxy's Edge, which we already kind of talked about a little bit. Same thing, it feels very similar. There are some tiny little wide open spaces where the crowds can kind of accumulate to. They can kind of just hang around there if they want to be inside the environment, if they want to stay there at Galaxy's Edge without really doing much. They just want to like engulf themselves in the entire experience. They can also decide to do that. I don't think you can really do that here at Super Nintendo World. I feel like you're either doing something if you're sitting at the mushroom area, like I said, depending on what day it is, but it can get incredibly chaotic. And I think that's one of the bigger issues when it comes down to the way that this Super Nintendo World was designed. Not to mention, and I don't know if that many people have talked about this, maybe they have. I don't really watch too much theme park content, and a lot of the people that I do watch consistently, I don't think they really reference this, but the whole power band situation I thought was kind of upsetting, at least in my personal opinion. You're already paying quite a bit of money. Let's assume that you're just like a small little family of three, yourself, a spouse, and then maybe a child or a couple of children. You're already paying a few $100s, maybe even over $1,000 in hotel accommodations, gas, the entry into the park, and now you're having to spend another potentially at least like 100 to 150 in power bands. I think each power band, last time I checked, was within the range of like $40 to $60. I'm assuming that some special edition ones may be a little bit higher, but for the most part, that's what you're paying, about $50. If at least three of you guys want to kind of engulf yourself in the experience, you would have to pay at least for three, maybe four of them. And that just felt like an incredibly dirty move, because there's not much to do here aside from probably spending a little over $100 at their little restaurant or buying merchandise, which is for the most part slightly overpriced. Or you would actually have to get on the ride or get on or try to have some fun with the interactive features, which I think all of them, if I remember correctly, needed the power band. So everything's kind of being locked behind something. If you do want to experience like the restaurant, it is pretty, it does come with a pretty hefty price point. If you want to just walk around the gift shop, I guess you can do that, but I think you'll end up walking away with at least some type of merch. And then the power band, I felt like that could have been a cool interactive feature that came with the experience, came with the entire package. I know there are other themed areas that do something similar. Even Disneyland has been, you know, a culprit of these type of dirty moves, but recently Disney has been pretty good about just giving you the experience head on. If you want to add extra stuff, like maybe the park hopper option or the Genie Pass, which, you know, can grant you an opportunity to, you know, skip lines and things of that nature. If you want to pay a little bit extra for that, I get it. Like I said, I don't love the idea of it, but at least it doesn't feel like such a dirty move. Here at Super Nintendo, really the only real thing that you can do where you don't want to, if you don't want to spend any extra money, is get on the ride, which usually is going to take roughly about an hour. Even if you get there early, if you rope drop and pay the extra, by the way, you're paying an extra like $20 to about $40, I think, to gain entrance an hour early per ticket. So meaning you're already, let's just assume that you're already paying about like $150 per ticket. You're adding the extra, let's say $30, that's about 180. And now you have to account for the fact that to fully enjoy the area, you have to actually purchase the power band. It just doesn't sit right with me. Now, I do feel like it's a little bit different with the wand in the Harry Potter universe, just because I feel like if you were to purchase that, you can take it home. It's a little memento. You can take it home, enjoy it, play around with it, or just have it in a display and, you know, use it as a collectible. Whereas in the power band, I don't feel like it has that much appeal on like a shelf display, so it doesn't really have much use outside of the actual park. The wands, at least, as I said, you can display them, you can enjoy them at home, and they have some interactive features there at the park. I suppose at the end of the day, if you're a big giant baller that just wipes his ass with Benjis all the time, this won't be that big of an issue. I think the only problem that you have is that the themed area does seem a bit smaller if you really break it down, unless you're doing the whole experience, like doing all the interactive features, going to the restaurant, going to the gift shop, going on the ride, then it'll feel a little bit bigger. But just entering the area, I think you're definitely going to be a little bit underwhelmed. I think the power band is also a big issue. I'm hoping that in the foreseeable future they do away with it. Maybe that was just something that they needed to kind of cover the costs of like the opening weekend or the opening year, and maybe they've already recouped enough to where they can do away with the power bands, or at least have that be a separate option. But I'm hoping in the future they do away with it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think it sits wrong with a lot of people that are going to the themed area. As I said, if you're only going maybe one time ever in your entire lifetime, I guess that kind of makes sense. You're going to spend just one time. But if this is going to be something that you're consistently going towards, and you're going to be spending a few $1,000s on a yearly basis on your vacation, it's definitely going to add up. And like I said, it's just something, it's a minor gripe that I had with the land. I do love it. It is very immersive. The entire experience, I think, is worth it if you have the few extra $100, but it definitely doesn't come without its issues. But as I always say, this is just my personal humble opinion. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Are you guys planning a trip to go to Super Nintendo here, whether it's in Hollywood or in Florida? Have you guys already been there? Did you have any problems with the power band? Do you feel like the land is a little bit too small and cramped? Or are you okay with the size? Are you a little bit more understanding than me, I guess is what I'm saying. Very curious to see what all of you guys have to say. Very curious to see what the community is feeling, especially considering that the land has now been open for well over a year. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoy this type of rambling content, make sure to stay tuned, because I do plan on doing this way more consistently. I want to get to the point where I'm at least uploading twice a week. So as I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.